Resident Evil has become one of my favorite franchises, guys, and it really wasn't so much. It wasn't always like that. I was a fan of Resident Evil, but I wasn't a massive fan. Once I got to Resident Evil 5, I absolutely loved, and I was really starting to pay attention to the Resident Evil universe. I loved 5. I know some of you out there didn't like it as much as I did, but that was really what got me into Resident Evil. Then Resident Evil 6 came out, and I thought that it was a massive step in the wrong direction, so I stopped really following Resident Evil at that point in time because obviously I didn't like that you were almost like playing the campaign multiple times, just different perspectives and things of that nature. It's an interesting concept, but I didn't really like it, so I thought it was kind of a step in the wrong direction. Once we got to Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, it brought me right back in. And so Resident Evil 7, absolutely incredible experience, guys. One of the scariest games I've ever played. It was an absolutely unnerving experience, unlike anything I've ever played before. And what a great way to kind of move into. But some big shoes to fill, at least in my mind, coming in the form of Resident Evil 8 or Resident Evil Village. And wow, did they knock it out of the park. Resident Evil Village, guys, is definitely right there with Resident Evil 7 in my mind. Absolutely love those two games. They are on to such a great trajectory here with the Resident Evil universe. I didn't know if they would ever be able to top Resident Evil 7, but man, they really got close with Resident Evil 8. And I'm playing it. I'm on my second playthrough right now of Resident Evil Village, and I definitely am gonna be able to give you guys more of, did I think it was better or a little bit under or right there with Resident Evil 7. That being said, though, this leads us, and you guys know this by if you're accustomed to my YouTube channel, we talk about the future of games, and one of those being Resident Evil 9, which I think everyone knows that Resident Evil 9 is definitely coming at some point or another. So the big question here is, guys, should Resident Evil 9 be more like Resident Evil 7? Should it be more like Resident Evil Village? Or should it be like one of the other previous installments, like a Resident Evil 5 or Resident Evil 6? So let's talk about that, guys. So with Resident Evil Village being the newest title in this universe, we know that obviously, it's gone from a third-person perspective to a first-person perspective, which I think is really done well with the Resident Evil universe. It really puts you, obviously, it really immerses you into the story and into the world. Not only did we get an incredible story with Resident Evil Village, but we also got Reverse, the multiplayer experience, which I can't wait to see where that goes in the future. I hope with continuous installments in the Resident Evil universe, we get updates and things of that nature with Reverse to really more and more ways to come back to the experience over and over again. Because a lot of times after you beat, say, Resident Evil Village or one of these other titles, you beat it once or twice, you move on to other games because there's not really other game modes outside of the campaign. But Reverse has created this element where you come back to the experience over and over again. And I absolutely love that about Resident Evil and what came with Resident Evil Village. So let's talk about Resident Evil 9, guys. So obviously we know where we are with Resident Evil Village. Absolutely incredible experience, guys. We're not going to go into spoilers here, but should the next installment be more like 7 or more like Village? And I gotta tell you guys, I think it needs to be more like Village. Here's why. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, I thought was a very good, it was a really good game when it came to setting up where they were trying to go in the Resident Evil universe. A very unnerving experience, very claustrophobic in a number of ways, and I think it was very good for what it was. But trying to kind of rehash that or try to do something similar to that, I just don't think it would land perfectly. Now, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I just don't think it would land very well. I think Resident Evil 7 Biohazard needed to be its own thing. Resident Evil Village had elements of 7, but it made it a little bit more open. But it still had the scares. It still had some very unnerving experiences within Village. A lot of people feel or felt that 7 was so much scarier than Village, and I disagree with that. I think that Village was certainly not as scary as Biohazard, but I thought that Village still had some very unnerving elements to it, and it was more character driven in my opinion. I thought like the characters that were in Village, from the villains to the creatures to just everything that was kind of encompassing it, I just thought that it was more character driven, whereas the character was more so like the house in Biohazard, which was very unnerving to say the least, and we talk about that all the time. So I think that Resident Evil 9 needs to do what Village did, where it took things from Biohazard, some of those unnerving elements, but also brought in some more action elements as well. And I think you merge those two things together and you've got yourself a very good Resident Evil title. I think it needs to be more like that. I do not want them to go back to the third person perspective, because then you're moving into the realm of more action over horror. And guys, for those of you who have watched my YouTube channel, you know that I am a massive horror fan. I love horror games. Resident Evil was always built as a horror, franchise really, that had action elements. I just don't want it to be an action game with some horror elements. Obviously the movies have more action, of course, than the horror, but Resident Evil to me was always, just the horror. It was always that pure horror, that was the sheer terror of the world going to this type of, in this state. And obviously it being just like an absolutely terrifying experience. So I would love them to stay in the first person, realm. I think it's more immersive as well. They do such a good job with it, in my opinion. Capcom has done unbelievable with Resident Evil. Never thought that it would get to this point where it was this incredible of a story and just the unnerving elements of it. So I would like them to kind of stick more closer to Village, and I think they're going to do that. Biohazard was more the setup. Village, I think, is more the norm of what we're going to see moving forward in Resident Evil, and I am totally okay with that. The puzzles and things of that nature, there's been a lot of, a lot of people talking about the puzzles, like they aren't very hard, they weren't difficult in Village, and I agree to it to an extent. I think that there needs to be some more puzzles, more things that you kind of relate to that of, previous Resident Evil games. But I also am okay. Sometimes the puzzles, guys, at least in my mind, sometimes it draws you out of the story. So you're focusing more on trying to solve a puzzle than you are on like the characters and the things that are actually going on within the story. So I was okay the balance I felt that they had in Village. So all in all, the long story short, guys, I believe that Resident Evil 9 needs to go more in the trajectory of that of Resident Evil Village, kind of continuing off of that, building off of that momentum. Reverse being just introduced now to the world as the multiplayer experience. Get some more game modes involved with that. Bring in more characters, things of that nature, and really just start continuing to build out this franchise. We obviously had Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, the movie. The movies, guys, just have not really landed in my mind. I know a lot of you out there do enjoy the movies. They just haven't really landed very well, though, in my opinion. I think a lot of it actually has to do with the casting. I don't really like the cast that they've had, even with the original Resident Evil movies to even now. I just would have, I think that the movies have not done the series justice. I think it's good that they exist, obviously, because it helps build the legacy, the lore of Resident Evil. But man, the games are by far and away way better, in my opinion, than the movies. And I cannot wait to see that, continue moving forward. I'd love to see the next edition of Resident Evil. Maybe is a little bit of a longer story. I think I clocked out at like around 9.5 hours with Village, which was still an incredible 9.5 hours. Don't get me wrong. I'd like to see a game that's maybe, 15 to 20 hours long. That would probably be good, just from a campaign perspective, because I just wanted to keep on being in that world. I didn't want it to end. And so the same thing happened with Biohazard as well. Didn't want that story to end. But nonetheless, guys, those are, that's what I feel. And this is just one man's thoughts. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you want Resident Evil 9 to be more like Biohazard or more like Village? Or do you want it to be like one of the original games, Resident Evil 2 or Resident Evil 5 or 6? Which one would you like them? What direction do you want Resident Evil to go with in the future? Let me know in the comment section down below. And for more Resident Evil 9 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV.